Hey everyone, welcome back to Empower Your Health with Integrative Medicine. If you're someone who feels stuck on sugar, you are in great company. Sugar is one of the most common food addictions that patients want to address when they come in to doctors and integrative providers. Oftentimes, my clients feel that their cravings have gotten out of control and that sugar is running the show. And since we know that sugar can be a setup for unhealthy eating patterns, weight gain, chronic inflammation in the body and the brain, and long-term health problems, it's something that we start to address right from the beginning. So if you're ready to break the sugar habit, this video is for you. First question really is sugar addiction real? And I would have to say absolutely. Sugar addiction and sugar cravings do exist for many people. And there's a number of reasons for this. One of the first reasons is that when we eat sugar, our taste receptors send a signal to our brain, and the brain releases these feel-good neurotransmitters, dopamine and serotonin, that send a reward signal to the reward center of the brain, which means we feel good, we feel satisfied, we get a boost of energy. It's a good feeling. And when we have a good feeling like that, our brain wants to hardwire it in. It wants to repeat that behavior over and over again so we feel good each and every time. This is also something that tends to be hardwired into our system. We know that even babies who are in utero, they prefer sugar to bitter, and that is most likely related to survival benefit. When our ancestors were gathering foods and they would eat a sugary berry, for example, it would probably be a safe food and one that had nutrient-dense qualities to it, so lots of nutrients in it, as opposed to eating a bitter berry, which could have been poisonous and harmed them, and they would want to stay away from. So that kind of tendency to like sugary foods is absolutely hardwired into us. Another reason is that when we eat a sugar-filled food or a food that imitates sugar, so like a refined carbohydrate, what we know is we get this big blood sugar spike, and then it is followed by a blood sugar crash. And we talked a lot about this in the first video on anti-inflammatory eating. And when we set this kind of blood sugar pattern up, the crashing really leads us to want to eat more of those foods that are going to boost our sugar levels and our energy levels. And so again, we're seeing that we get into this pattern, almost like this unconscious pattern of eating, which can promote more and more sugar intake. And then finally, we get comfortable in our health habits, and we have lots of different reasons that we like sugar. They can be emotional reasons, they can be social reasons, and it is really a comfort food for a lot of people. And we have to ask ourselves, when we're going to grab some sugar, why are we doing it? Are we lonely? Are we bored? Are we looking for a little more excitement or sweetness in our life? And we have to start addressing those things as well as we're coming off of sugar. So since we know that eating sugar and sweet foods can lead to more eating sugar and more eating sweet foods, how much sugar is really too much? Well, first of all, we want to differentiate between the sugars that naturally occur in foods like whole grains or fruits and vegetables, and the sugars that we add to foods in cooking, or even more so in the processing of modern foods. While there is no recommended daily allowance for added sugars, there are some guidelines out there. The American Heart Association actually recommends that women limit their added sugar to 25 grams a day, which turns out to be about 6 teaspoons of sugar or 100 calories per day. They also recommend that men limit their added sugar intake to 36 grams per day, which turns out to be about 9 teaspoons of sugar or 150 calories a day. And the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that children 2 and up have no more than 25 grams of sugar added per day. But as you can imagine, most Americans get way more than this, and our typical sugar intake is closer to 75 grams of sugar per day. And when you do the math, that turns out to be almost 57 pounds of added sugar per year, with a whole calorie intake of 98,500 calories. So almost 100,000 calories per year of added sugar, which honestly, if not offset by really healthy habits like great exercise routines and a mostly anti-inflammatory diet, whole food diet otherwise, can really lead to lots of weight gain. So the number of calories that we're talking about can lead to almost an extra 30 pounds of weight per year if we're not careful. And we know from population studies that our society is getting heavier and heavier with our Western diets, and this is a key reason for that, something that we always have to keep in mind. I was actually surprised to learn that most of our added sugars in this country come from our beverage choices. And we include in that fruit juices, juice boxes, especially those that have added sugar, sodas, sweetened iced teas and coffees, and energy drinks and athletic drinks that are supposed to be good for you. They're marketed as being good for you. But let's face it, sugar is also present in things like candies and snack foods and baked goods like breads and cereals. It's present in flavored yogurts, and it's there in sauces and syrups and salad dressings. So even things like ketchup or relish or a jar of tomato sauce that you buy at the grocery store has added sugar in it. And, you know, just like the pennies can add up in your budget, the sugar can add up in your sugar budget for the day. So it's something to be aware of. Natural sweeteners, I will say, also count as sugars. I have a lot of patients who come in and say, well, I'm having a lot of cups of tea and I add a tablespoon of honey every time I have it, and as if that doesn't count, and it absolutely does count. So 1 tablespoon of honey is going to have 17 grams of added sugar. It's not something that we want to do on a very regular basis. We don't want to have 10 cups of tea every day with honey in it. And I'll have to say that I know I'm always holding a cup of tea, but when I drink herbal tea, it is, generally speaking, without anything added to it, just with its natural sweetness. Real maple sugar also has 12 grams of sugar per tablespoon, and it counts as an added sugar. Although these are substances that do have some nutritional value to them, they still count as sugar. So what are some of the natural sugars that do not count as added? And I would say, just to remember, those are the ones that are found in whole foods like fruits and vegetables and whole grains, etc. They can really be great alternatives to sugary snacks, but it can take a minute. It can take a minute for your taste buds to reacclimate. If you are going from having a really sugary gummy bear or a sour bear type of snack, and you're changing right over to grapes, they're not going to taste like much. So you really need to acclimate, give your body a chance to adjust. It can take about a week or so. But fruits like pears and bananas and pineapples and melons and strawberries, they all have some really wonderful taste to them. We just have to allow our bodies to be receptive to that. So what are some of the best ways to break the sugar habit? Well, we're going to say this over and over again in these videos. The first step is really to become aware of what you're doing. Where are you actually getting your sugar? And I would say, once again, reading labels is extremely helpful. We have to look for hidden sugars on labels. And when we read those labels, we're looking for words like syrup, honey, sugar, molasses, cane juice, vegetable and fruit juice concentrates. That's a tricky one, right? And other words that end in OSE, which is the biochemical ending for any sugar. So things like sucrose, dextrose, maltose, etc. Now, the FDA recently began listing sugars and added sugars on labels, and I would say that this is a step in the right direction, and it's still right now a bit of a mixed blessing. So we have to look at the actual grams of sugar, not at the percentage. When you look at the grams, you know what you're getting, right? We know that for women and kids, we want no more than 25 grams a day. For men, 36 grams a day. But when you look at a label, the percentages are based on a diet where it's a 2,000 calorie diet and 10% of those calories are the allowance for added sugar in a day. And that means 50 grams of added sugar for a 2,000 calorie diet. And we don't want to be misleading. We don't want to be miscalculating. So when we're talking about a 50 gram allowance, that's more than the average person is actually going to need or want in their diet. And we know that at higher levels, like more than 35 or 40 grams of sugar added per day, really does have health consequences. Things like inflammatory diseases and depression and mood changes and all sorts of other stuff that go along with this. So we want to be careful about this. We don't want to just look at a label and look at the percentage and think it's okay, unless that is a percentage that really actually pertains to us. An easy way to do this is to look at the percent and then double it, because that gives you a better idea of what percentage of your allowable sugar you're eating from that one serving of that one food. So when we set ourselves up for success, one of the most important things we can do is to curb our hunger by staying really well hydrated and eating a well-balanced diet with snacks and meals that keep us satisfied before we get too hungry. Because when we get hungry, that's the danger zone. That's when we're more likely to grab for a sugary or high glycemic snack. So the trick to this is to include protein in every meal and snack. It really helps curb the hunger. It keeps that glycemic load lower, and you're not getting the sugar spikes and crashes. It's also a great way, if you find yourself eating with that sawtooth pattern, grabbing something sweet, grabbing something carby, it's a great way to stop it. So once you're aware of that, really having a snack or meal that is high in protein, that has fiber, because you can really fill up on fiber. So when this happens to me, I might go into the refrigerator and grab some leftover chicken or beef or whatever it is, and maybe half of a sweet potato, and kind of fill up on that so that that constant craving can go away. But we just want to curb our hunger to set ourselves up for success. We want to be mindful of portion sizes, and this really comes into play when we look at the food pyramid. So the anti-inflammatory pyramid or the Mediterranean diet pyramid, all of those have sugars and sweets at the top of the pyramid, meaning they can be part of the diet, but not the foundation for the diet. They're not the big picture at the bottom, right? They're not what we want to base our daily calories on. And these sweets are meant to be enjoyed sparingly. And I would say the healthier sweets, like a really true dark chocolate of 70% or more, you can enjoy an ounce of that most days. It's not going to be an issue. But when we get into the sweeter sweets, we do have to be more sparing with them. A couple of times a week should be fine, especially if you time it right. So it can really help to have something sweet in the context of a larger meal. And this goes back to the point that we made before about lower glycemic eating. So if you have a full meal that has protein and healthy fat and fiber and vegetables, and you're getting full from that, then having a sweet as part of that, it's like you're not going to spike your sugar to the same extent. You're going to have that sugar content absorbed by the larger meal itself. So having something as a treat in the context of a larger meal can really be beneficial. I've also heard of people opting to have their sweets earlier in the day because there's less of an insulin response to that and less of a chance of insulin resistance developing. And I even have colleagues who advise people to have dessert first for a meal and then follow the dessert with the meal, and that would be, one and done on that day. And same idea, lowering the glycemic load. I would say there's some great tricks here, like swapping out sugars for healthy options. And since we're talking about so many sugary calories coming down to beverages, there are some simple ways of doing this. Now, I'm someone who used to absolutely love iced tea, and I still love cool tea, but I don't get it in the store anymore. I make it myself. I choose my favorite herbal teas, and I can make them in small portions or large portions. I usually, on my way out the door in the morning, will take a jar of water and put a tea bag or two in it, cover it with a lid, and then by the time I get to work, I have a nice cold infusion tea. And my favorites are things like chamomile, which has a nice natural apple type sweetness to it, or lemon balm, which is citrusy, mint tea, so peppermint tea is wonderful and very refreshing. And even teas like Tulsi can be very easily enjoyed and made. So it's kind of like making sun tea, one glass at a time or one pitcher at a time, but keeping those on hand because they really don't need extra sweetness. They can be enjoyed just as they are. And then another trick, of course, is using a splash of 100% fruit juice in seltzer water or in water, and just using that as flavor. You can even do half and half to get yourself off of the juice kick. And then I also like to imitate my favorite spa waters with fresh cucumbers, mint, slices of orange or strawberries, or even slices of lemon. And you just infuse that water with those flavors, and they can be really very refreshing and super low in sugar. I would say it's important to know your trouble spot as always and set yourself up for success. So what that means is if your family always has ice cream after dinner, a great place to start is in the freezer. So one of my favorite frozen treats is just to take a ripe banana, slice it up, and then put those slices into the freezer and save them for later. Frozen bananas are a very sweet and delicious treat. You just take them out, let them thaw for a few minutes, and enjoy them. There are some people who put a little bit of cocoa powder on it or maybe a little bit of chocolate sauce on it for a special treat. But the idea is going with the more natural foods. I also really enjoy frozen cherries. Same thing, same idea, very refreshing. And then if I'm wanting something more, what I will do is blend one of my favorite smoothies. And my absolute favorite for this purpose is it's made with cocoa, dark cocoa, peanut butter, and frozen bananas and water. And I blend that, and then I pour it into small bowls and maybe add some banana slices and let it freeze. And again, when I'm ready to have that treat, I take it out, I let it thaw a little bit, and I can enjoy it when everyone else in the family is having ice cream, or I can just enjoy it when I'm ready. So knowing where your trouble spots are and getting ready for those is always a great way to go. Another kind of trouble spot for many people is in socializing. So often we go out to lunch with friends or we go out for drinks with friends, and that can be just a wonderful way of doing it. Of course, we can order healthy foods, but I also have found it's really wonderful to go out with friends for a walk or for a hike and to switch out the eating activity with an exercise activity, which can make us all feel terrific at the end of the day. And then just to remember that each person is an individual, and for some people, it's really all or nothing. They are either eating sugar or they're just not eating it at all, and it is easier to go cold turkey and to just stop. If you're ready to stop sugar 100%, that means stopping sugar, refined carbohydrates, and alcohol, and really all at once. Most important is to stay well hydrated, eat whole foods that are packed with protein and fiber. Be ready, have them sort of prepared in advance, whether it's a salad or a protein or a smoothie, just making sure that they're easy to get to. And then being ready with distractions like a change of scene, being ready to go out for a walk, doing whatever it is that you need to do when you start feeling that pull to the sugar. And give yourself a week, really give yourself a full week. And after a week, see how you feel. And even for patients that I've had who have had fatigue or muscle aches or lots of irritability when coming off of sugar, I have yet to have anyone come back and say after a week, wow, I really wish I hadn't given up sugar, because most of the time we're just really happy when we get off of it and we feel better overall. It's a great accomplishment. So something to be proud of and to continue to do. It's really all about taking back your own control so that you can run your food choices instead of having your food choices run you. I do hope this helps you break your sugar habit and to become more mindful about the way you're approaching sugar in general. Certainly the changes we make today can create a whole different future tomorrow. So for now, I'm Dr. Andrea Fasati, an integrative physician and board-certified internist, here to help you empower your health by teaching you the concepts of integrative medicine and functional medicine so you can have better conversations with your healthcare team and take better care of yourself. Here's to you.